If you're like me and you grew up playing the PS1, it's more than likely you played Crash Bandicoot and or Spyro the Dragon. So it's also more than likely you bought a PS2 for the sole purpose of playing the fourth installment. CTI and Crash Bash held us over on the Crash Bandicoot front, but now is the time to feast our eyes on the next generation of Crash and Spyro. Except there was a slight problem. Aside from appearing on multiple consoles such as these GameCube versions I have, neither of these were created by the original developers. I'm sure you've all heard it before, but here's a refresher. While it's true Naughty Dog and Insomniac created Crash and Spyro, Universal Interactive owned the rights to the games. So when their contract with Sony ended, Sony bought both Naughty Dog and Insomniac to be first-party developers for the PlayStation 2, thus allowing Universal to hire other third-party developers to produce future Crash and Spyro titles. There may be more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. Both Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex and Spyro Enter the Dragonfly are the first of their respective series to be multi-platform, and Spyro Enter the Dragonfly is the first Spyro game to not be developed by the original creators. But let's start off with Crash Bandicoot: The Wrath of Cortex. To start off on the bad foot, the story is dull and nothing we haven't seen before. It centers on the appearance of a new super weapon created by Cortex, a genetically advanced Bandicoot named Crunch. To help power up Crunch, Uka Uka releases a group of destructive masks known as the Elementals. Aku Aku witnesses the destruction and confronts Uka Uka, which goes as well as you might think. He instructs Coco to prepare the virtual reality warp room? Okay, that will give them the advantage to travel the world and gather crystals. Why did you purposely build this when you already stopped Cortex from getting the crystals from their point of origin? Also, Crash Bandicoot 3 ended with him and Entropy as babies, so why are they now restored to their former ages? Anyone? Most of the game design remains unchanged from Crash 3. 5 warp rooms with 5 levels, each with a crystal to collect, and a hidden 6th room with 5 additional levels for every 5 relics to collect. Yes, the time trials are back and they're tedious. I'll tell you why later. What has been changed is that Crash now has new vehicles to use, such as the Atmosphere, an aliens-inspired power loader, and a helipack that's just like the jetpack from Crash 2. Coco is now playable outside of vehicles, and she's not that much different to Crash. She still has her own vehicles though, such as a scooter and a spaceship, and they control just as well as Crash's vehicles. Call me picky, but the overabundance of vehicles makes the traditional Crash gameplay feel paper thin. Yes, Crash 3 had vehicles too, but they were spread evenly across the course of the game, and in total there was only 6 vehicles. Wrath of Cortex has 15 of them, most of which are used for at least half the level before or after traditional platforming. The worst vehicle is that fucking yellow submarine. I refuse to believe that the programmers and playtesters thought this was fun to play. Its hitbox is way too big and enemies will just come out of nowhere. The Dune buggy power slides all over the place when turning, and the plane is somehow worse than the plane levels from Crash 3, including the one where you have to hold the fire button down to lock onto enemies. The only real fun vehicle to use is the Atmosphere. It works for starters and moves like a real ball, but there's no way to stop in place from falling into nitros and death pits. These vehicles appear so often you're begging for some traditional platforming gameplay. Speaking of traditional platforming, the controls feel off. It's hard to explain, but when Crash 2 was developed, the Gould 2 engine tightened the controls of Crash 1 while allowing more frames of animation. This was carried over into Crash 3. Obviously here, it was built on a different engine, but it seems that the programmer based it on watching Crash gameplay rather than playing it. Crash moves slower and is clunkier to control, making time trials for relics seem like a chore rather than a fun bonus after completion. Add that to the complaints about the vehicles, and that's the reason why, folks! But it's not just that. Other design aspects of Crash 3 are either missing or changed. There's rarely any coloured gem or hidden paths, the Aku Aku invincibility is shorter, and the first power-up is called the Tiptoe. The what? Furthermore, all of the power-ups are the same as in Crash 3, with the Super Belly Flop hidden as an extra power-up. The Tiptoe is as original as it gets. Fortunately, the death roots are still present, though they don't hold the same menacing appeal. Crash 2 and Crash 3's death roots were hard by design. It took skill to beat them as they could only be accessed by not dying during the level up to them. Wrath of Cortex's idea of difficulty is adding nitros everywhere. Speaking of design, the levels themselves are just boring. Aside from the vehicles, Nothing about the game is challenging or forces you to make use of the power-ups you collect. Maybe on a few occasions you'll have to use a double jump or the tiptoe, mainly on bonus rooms, but nothing else. Crash Free took advantage of the fact that you gained the super spin and the bazooka and designed paths where you needed to use them. The presentation is meh. Using the same cartoon style as the previous Crash games, Crash Bandicoot and the rest of the cast look exactly the same as the predecessors, just more rounded and sharper looking, with the Xbox version giving the Bandicoots a fur texture. Because reasons. But the animation is a little off. Again, it's like the animators just copied the animations from the original trilogy and didn't bother to take advantage of the more powerful system specs. The same goes for the levels too. They have more effects, moving creatures and backgrounds, but the colour palette is not as nearly as bright or vibrant. I'm pretty sure someone on the design team said it should be more realistic. Yeah, sure, an anthropomorphic Bandicoot fighting a yellow scientist needs realism. The music is okay, but forgettable. It's great that there was not one song repeated. Each level has its own theme. But if you played any track without telling me it's from Wrath of Cortex, I wouldn't even think it was on the first or even fifth guess. Heck, Crash Twinsanity has a more recognizable soundtrack, and I hate that game. Okay, I've been holding off on this, but it's the one thing everyone talks about when it comes to Wrath of Cortex. The loading screens are long. I mean, ridiculously long. Longer than Sonic 06's loading screens, though not as frequent. The GameCube and Xbox versions aren't as long, maybe 10 seconds or so, but the PS2 version, which I remind you is what everyone played, clocks in at 45 seconds. That's longer than the PS1 trilogy combined. Luckily for the PS2 owners, the Platinum version has fixed this issue. But I know we all want that black label box anyway. But with all that said, is Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex that bad? Well, yeah. It's not good, but I would say it's the worst Crash game. Crash Boom Bang certainly takes home that shit-covered trophy. But Wrath of Cortex is nothing more than a build on Crash Bandicoot 3, just with more vehicles and no originality. Like everyone else, I loved this when I was a kid, but when compared to its heritage, there's not one thing I can point to and say, that's great. It's easy, bland, and tedious at times. I know they did what they could to create something familiar yet different, but without any innovation or evolution to the franchise, it remains in limbo. Surprisingly, the original concept was for an open world game with puzzles and planet hopping, but due to Universal falling out with Mark Cerny and Sony, Traveller's Tales had to scrap the idea and develop a standard Crash game in 12 months, which would be applaudable, but Naughty Dog achieved that with Crash 2, 3 and CTR. Again, not good, but not the worst either. I rate this game 4.5 out of 10. And that's Crash out of the way, but join me next time as we take a look at Spyro Enter the Dragonfly.